I only acknowledge that to our team because I think we played harder than what we had been playing, and particularly in terms of physicality on the defensive side. So, I wanted to acknowledge that with them and address that with them. But then you have to combine that with playing a little better also. And so we didn't do that. And so you come into an environment like this on the road against a good team. You don't have to play great. You don't have to play perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I do think you have to play hard. I think you have to play smart. And I think you have to play halfway decent offensively. I think you have to play halfway decent. And we did not achieve that in terms of our overall performance offensively. Their pressure bothered us a little bit at times, I think. But ultimately, we did have some clean looks, and cumulatively, we did not perform.
Questions? Jack?
Lamont, with the continuous missed three-pointers, how much of it at this point do you feel like is more of like a mental thing for these guys, that the shots aren't falling versus they're just not making any shots at
all? That's a good question. I don't know. We'll try to get to the bottom of it. But our team was constructed in a way where that's what basketball is today. This was actually just probably a normal amount of threes. Like, our league is taking the most three-point attempts of any high major conference out there. And so, not that we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, but our team was constructed in a way where we thought that we would be able to withstand off shooting nights just on the volume of guys that are capable of shooting. And so just trying to get to the root of why, on the days we shoot well, seems like as if everyone shoots a pretty high percentage, and the days that we don't, then it seems like no one is able to shoot on those days. And contrary to popular belief, your performance from the three-point line doesn't really affect what my performance from the three-point line is. So, just have to figure it out at the end of the day. The guys have to figure it out. They have to have a good relationship with their shot and know if they need to tweak or if they need to. Some guys are overdoing it in terms of how many shots they get up. I mean, that's a real thing. I think we got a couple of guys that probably are probably overdoing it in terms of how many shots they're getting up in order to try to, shake off a little shooting rust. So, anyway, yeah, we're still working on that.
Jackson?
Lamont scored off the bench 41-14 tonight. Obviously didn't have Eli, but what do you think, was different tonight that kept guys off the bench from getting to their usual scoring figures?
Yeah, they were physical. We didn't play as many guys as many minutes, I don't think. I mean, Eli averages almost 30 minutes a game. So he's one of the usual suspects that way. We weren't moving as freely as what we would have liked. They were physical in terms of stopping us from cutting. We were discouraged by that. And so I think that was probably part of it also. A couple guys played heavy minutes, and then we were just going to play with those guys. We had a couple of stretches defensively that I thought we were pretty good. So, some of those bench guys didn't play quite as much, and then also just didn't play great. We got the ball around the basket a couple times. I know Crease missed one or two around the basket, and a couple other guys. But it's nice to get some punch off the bench, but my own personal view on that is, in the short term, it's probably one of the most meaningless stats to me. Like, comparing my bench to their bench, like, at the end of the day, at some point, it turns out your final score versus their final score. So, I mean, what if Michi and Mike had 40 each, and we got no bench production whatsoever? We have done it. I understand where your question is coming from. We have relied on some points from the bench. A lot of that is Eli, not only with what he scores, but he also gets a few assists every game, and then he generates offense with just his penetration and creating shots for others.
John?
What was most important for you guys in hanging tough there from a rebounding standpoint and also defensively? in the paint, maybe more so than y'all done.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to say this, but this should probably be instantaneously stricken from the record. But I'd like to say, well, we spent a lot of time talking about it and showing film, and that we did some extra work on it. I mean, certainly we did that, but there's no game that I'm just waiting for the game that you can win without any level of physicality. And so that's been a point of emphasis for us, particularly after, I would say, the Butler game was the first time that it was like, whoa, this is what it looks like for real physical guys and hard-playing guys. And so it's been a real point of emphasis after that game especially. But today I just, I mentioned, I said, if we're not going to do those things, we could have saved, I don't know how much it was to get the bus to come up here, the fuel expenses, the hotels, the per diems, all the food and lodging, and we could have saved that if you're not going to play physical basketball against these guys. It wasn't worth coming up here for. So, maybe to some level they were prepared to do that because they bought what I was selling in that instance.
Phil?
As you cut into the lead in the second half, did you see your guys attacking more, trying to get into the lane to the rim more? Is that by design? Is that something you instructed them to do?
Yeah, especially at the end when you really need baskets to happen a little bit quicker. There's no whining and dining. We got to get straight to the business, and so it's a ball screen, and our offense isn't constructed that way generally, to consistently come down and initiate and finish with just a ball screen. But I think when you're trying to generate quicker shots, that's really what it is. And then we needed to get to the basket, just try to get to the basket. They're a physical team. They're a physical team, and we drew some fouls. I'd like to have drawn more. But we put ourselves in harm's way and made the officials make a couple decisions on a couple of them. Michi got down there and made a couple of strong moves at the end, even before right at the end. But I'd say probably once it got to like 4 minutes, in that 4-minute mark or so, it was much more of a concerted effort to try to attack, and then something has to happen pretty quickly in these next 2 dribbles from the original attack.
Last 2 questions, Jack and then John.
This is another game where you guys come up short against one of these better opponents in the quad 1, quad 2 rankings. Is that concerning at all heading into conference play without one of those wins, or is it something that you guys will still have plenty of opportunities against that quality of competition to boost your resume?
Yeah, I'm concerned with improving more than anything. So I think both of the games in the Greenbrier at the time were both quad 1s. Certainly coming up here is a quad 1, and so we like to play those games. You like to win those games. They can really help you out, but our mettle will be tested in the SEC like no one else's probably when you're talking about the gauntlet of 18 teams. And I know we can look and say compared to last year, but let's stop comparing to what last year was. But it's a really good league, and it hasn't performed the same way. But also, I think I read something again where, according to Ken Palm, our league's ranked number 1 again. So that's the toughest league from top to bottom. And so there'll be plenty of opportunities. Every road game, I can't imagine a road game that's not going to be a quad 1. That's just hard for me to imagine. And then you're going to get your fair share of home quad 1s also. So to answer your question, alas, it's not concerning to me. We have to continue to improve. I thought there was incremental improvement, at least from a physicality and how hard we played. There's something to take that and move forward from that. But we have to keep getting better.
Last question, John.
Two quick ones for you. Was that a
Okay,
little bit of zone?
you always ask a little double. I'm going to try my hardest to remember the second one.
Was that a little bit of zone at the end of the game defensively?
Yeah.
What was the impetus behind that? And also with Eli, was there a question as to whether he might be able to go? Do you go through shoot around?
Okay, good. I think I'm locked in on answering both of those. Okay, so yeah, we went to the zone. They didn't score against the zone. If I recall. But so I thought they had gotten some really good looks, or we fouled. You know, they got some good looks. They missed one, which was good, and then we rebounded it, and that was kind of the ultimate domino that made me say, let's go to the zone. They got another quality look and missed it, but we also were fouling in there. We also had Norton in there. I thought it helped just with as far as having a matchup and relative to playing some zone, and you're really guarding an area and you've got some basic rules. But so I thought it was good for us. There's another thing as you're trying to develop and you're trying to take something. Okay, you played a good team that's got some shooters, and you were able to. And we haven't played the zone a ton this year, but. With not as much prep on it, we went out there and executed the zone fairly well, I would say. So it created a little indecision, and they were a little tentative at times. But so there was that. And then, Eli went through shoot-around today. And, I personally was not that optimistic just, having sprained ankles or had someone roll up on my ankle before. I wasn't that optimistic 24 hours ago that his body would respond the way that he needed to compete in this atmosphere and at this level. But we played it by ear and just looked at it, and he was getting treatment and doing all the things. And then even after shoot around, he seemed to move okay. But then he called me after talking with our trainer and said he just didn't think he was able to go and be able to do things. This guy, he wants to play, of course, but I just didn't. I also didn't think it would do any good to go out there, play, be a shell of yourself, probably hoping that maybe you can get some things done. Not able to move the way you want to defensively, and then also being at risk of going out there and having something happen again where now maybe you're out for another couple of weeks. Why would we do that? So I just, all in all, just seemed to make sense that he wasn't available today.
Yeah, happy for our team, and especially Ace Buckner. He's been hanging in there with us, and I told him earlier, I think it was either right before Mercer, like the days are running together, that hang in there. I think you're going to have some good time here soon, and he's practiced a little bit better, and I felt like this would be a good game for him, and he was great. And obviously that was a big difference for us with Zach being out. He really helped do a lot of good things for our team. Thought defensively we were good most of the night. Obviously Michi's a terrific player, and he was the guy we were trying to really do a good job on. Our guys were alert to that, and if we'd have made some free throws, it probably would have been a little bit more relaxing ending. But this is a good win, another quick turnaround after the Mercer and BYU games. It's a lot in a short amount of time, and just proud of the way our guys responded. Questions?
It seemed like Ace was really putting his head down, getting to the basket, driving well, but he was finishing.
Yeah.
How much can that do for his confidence?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, he's a strong guard, plays with great leverage, and has the ability to do those things. And, some of the way they play, you're going to be forced to drive the ball some like that. They're staying home on a lot of three-point shots and limiting your threes. So they're challenging you to finish those tough plays. And he was good enough tonight to be able to do some of that. So that was good. And certainly big momentum for him. He'll build off that.
Zach Foster, do you have any idea?
I don't know. He's going to get an MRI tomorrow, and we'll know more then.
An ankle? Or
Knee.
Okay.
How about what? I think groin?
I think it was a groin, or I don't know. I'm sure there's a fancier word that they said in there that I didn't really listen to, but they think he'll be fine in a couple days.
As great as Ace was, a little bit of a learning moment for them, and when he got his own rebound.
Yeah,
down there at the end.
yeah. There's a lot of those in these games for our team. Yeah, he needed to bring that one back out, but I'm sure when you're playing as well as he was playing tonight, he felt like he was going to make that one. He also had 6 defensive rebounds, which was huge. So he was playing both sides of the ball very well.
Talked about Ace practicing better. I guess what were you seeing in practice?
Just the same things. I mean, he's a confident kid. It's ironic in the Mercer game, he actually made a defensive error or two early, and that kind of sat him over there longer than and he would have liked. I planned on letting him go a little bit, but then the game was not going well for our team. He made a critical error, gave up a 3 on something that we'd practiced for 2.5 days. And, you know, it just, you can't do those things. Like, we can't have those kinds of mistakes. It was one of the main things in the scouting report. And, you know, hopefully he learns from it. And obviously tonight he was terrific. And, you know, we needed him. And he's a good player. I mean, we have a lot of confidence in him. And you know, he's just a freshman. So, you know, very bright future.
Over the course of the whole season, you play a lot of big games, but where does this one kind of play out in that, and to rebound from the way last year's game finished?
Yeah, no, obviously it's a big win, and, you know, it becomes a little more challenging. First time maybe in I don't know how many years we don't have a South Carolina kid on our roster. And so, you know, and you have so much turnover in your rosters. Lamont and I talked about it a little bit, like that the rivalry for kids that are just getting there isn't, you know, maybe you're kind of selling it a little bit yourself as the coach. Now you come out and there's a great crowd. That helps, right? Let everybody know how important the game is. But it was a good win against, you know, our rival, an in-state one that'll make a lot of Clemson people happy this week and throughout the year, and the coaches too. So that's great. And, you know, but then it'll be on to the next, like Cincinnati's right around the corner.
Carter had a really good game except for the free throw line, kind of an aberration for him.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, he's been shooting the ball much better. Sometimes it gets in your head a little bit. He had a couple that looked really good and just kind of hit back iron and bounced around. But more importantly, it was just he did some good things late in the game in ball screen defense. You know, there's just so many different things that you're exposed to. You know, and a guy like that coming up in levels, the physicality, the finishing at the rim, you know, sometimes just catching the ball with all the pushing and shoving with heavy people, you know, elbows in your back, and then you got to try to finish. And, you know, I think the other thing is there's a wearing effect, like you're tired. I mean, it's, you know, this was not an up and down game, especially in the second half, but when you're asked to guard 2 ball screens in a possession and you're, you know, 25 feet from the basket and you're got to get back in there and then rebound and run the floor. I mean, there's a reason it's hard. You know, these aren't driveway free throws.
The way you guys have played the better teams on your schedule to this point, how good do you feel about this group as you start to head towards?
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling good about our team. I like what we have. I think we have some versatility. You know, I'm crossing my fingers that things are going to be good with Zach because he's another important piece that, you know, brings a different element with size at the position and speed. But I think we're improving, which is important. You know, so yeah, I like what this team has done. You know, we've challenged ourselves in a lot of games. We've played well in different venues. We haven't always finished. But that's not easy to do against some of the teams we've played.
Coach, you went back to what you were doing earlier in the year, subbed out all 5 starters, brought in the bench. What were you looking for there, and what did you see from those guys? Yeah,
really good. In fact, the starters, I think we were down 4 points in their 4-minute run, and then the bench guys, you know, we've kind of done that again. We did it for Mercer, and the bench guys played better. Well, the bench guys did not play as well. The starters had us off to a good start offensively. But just getting those guys in and getting them going because we knew we were going to need them. And, you know, that group, like I said, they practice together a lot, so they're comfortable. Some of the offensive stuff we run with them is a little different, so it's another thing for an opponent to prepare for. And I thought those guys, you know, you get their feet wet early and see who's playing well and then how much trust. Like I thought Chase Thompson played well. I thought he gave us good minutes in the second half in the middle part of the game, especially on the defensive end. I thought he was helpful. You know, so that was great time for him.
Nick Davidson had, I think, 5 turnovers today.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to see. I saw that when I was looking at the stats real brief, and I was kind of trying to remember them, and I can't really remember them off the top of my head. You know, I know he had a couple tough plays inside, but that was, yeah, that's not really who he is. He hasn't done that all year, but, you know, they were swiping. I thought he did some good things defensively because he was guarding Studi for a good bit and did a nice job.
You mentioned a few games ago this is the best five that needs to be in the game.
Yeah.
In the game situation. Are you okay with the fact that you might not have that right now, or you're still?
Yeah, I mean, I think you would love, as a coach, to have, a go-to guy and, 5 guys, 3, 4, 5 guys that you feel really comfortable. I think we have some of those, but that's one of the things that makes our team good. R.J. Godfrey has finished most of the games, and there have been games when Carter Welling's over there, or Nick Davidson's over there, and today Carter Welling was playing well. R.J. kind of got into some foul trouble, and then Carter was doing some great things in ball screen coverage, and so we kind of rode him for a while. And that's why we have a chance to have a good team, is we have multiple guys that you hope you can go to. And, you're hoping that one of them's going to play well that night, and the interior, and, usually those guys have.
How do you even make the call between RJ and Carter? They've been a little bit starting
Yeah, just some of it's feel, some of it's opponent. Like they started their big guy in the second half, and I just felt like I didn't want RJ to get a third foul right away. I figured they're going to go at him with a post up or something like that. It happened to us in Georgetown in the first half of the one of the early plays, and I just, it was just a gut, like, hey, let's go with Carter right here and put size on size, and I think it was good, and to Carter's credit, he really responded.
Coach, with the addition of the 41 patch, what have you told the guys about the pride they feel and the legend of Eldon?
Yeah, we've talked about it a little. We haven't gotten into it, in crazy depth. It's like this has been a lot for our players here these last couple days. Just everything just keeps flipping with finals and then game preps and meetings to get ready for games but obviously we have talked about him being a Littlejohn legend, and I think they know that he was a pretty doggone good NBA player. It's sad because he was coming around a little bit more here recently, and obviously you'd love for your players to meet those guys, and we've gotten to meet some of the Littlejohn legends and just other former players that come through here. But I spoke about this maybe last game or whatnot. I think it says a lot about who Eldon Campbell is as a man, that they're doing a moment of silence in all the different NBA arenas that they were doing it. They didn't just do it at one. I mean, he left an impact at a lot of different places. And they don't do that for just a guy who's a pretty good player. They do that for you because of what you're about. And so that was kind of what we talked about with our team.